MMA has a severe domestic violence problem. And I'm not even going to get into any names. There are a lot of fighters who were at one point my favorite fighters to watch, who have been linked to domestic violence cases, allegedly. Even the president of the UFC, I'll even say that Dana White was caught in a domestic violence incident where he slapped his wife, right? It's rife. It's rife throughout the UFC and MMA in general, unfortunately. And this video isn't, the aim of this video isn't to shame said individuals. I'm not even going to mention names. I'm not trying to say it's not a shameful thing, because it is. I'm not going to come after anybody specifically. But I will say this. MMA is not what a lot of people think it is. When you think of martial arts, a lot of people, when they think of martial arts, they think of somebody who's disciplined, relaxed, calm, able to think clearly under pressure, resilient. And that is true for many martial artists, for sure, whether they did kung fu, karate, all sorts of things, even MMA, wrestling, kickboxing, Muay Thai, jiu-jitsu. But the reality is, when it comes to all of those arts, boxing included, think about it. What's the one common denominator? It's all about fighting, violence. That links all of these arts together. Jiu-jitsu, being the gentle art, is a joke. There's nothing gentle about strangling your fellow man, or breaking limbs, twisting kneecaps. What's gentle about that? Judo, the gentle way. What's gentle about being launched through the air, over one's hip, smashing them into the ground? What's gentle about that? A lot of these older judokas are struggling physically because of how violent the sport is. Judo is probably one of the most violent grappling arts, in my opinion, out there, if not the most violent. Right? It's either that or Greco-Roman wrestling. Those are extremely violent grappling arts. Extremely. Imagine being judo slammed on concrete. That is crazy. But when it comes to MMA, specifically mixed martial arts, the culture I think that surrounds it is what can also lead to this rise, if you will, of domestic violence incidents that you're seeing throughout the community. It's a shame. It is a shame. But I can see why. I've been doing MMA myself since 2014 officially. That's when I joined the first gym I ever joined. And I can tell you from personal experience, aggression is a real thing in this game. And I think, again, when it comes to the culture specifically with MMA, I saw a statistic that apparently an MMA fighter, a professional MMA fighter, maybe you don't even have to be professional, but they're 4 times more likely to be involved in a domestic incident than the regular person. Something like that. There was some statistic like that. And it makes sense. You're spending day in, day out, punching your teammates in the face. Bear hugging each other. Gripping, holding on to chokes, guillotine chokes. That's one of my favorite techniques when it comes to grappling. Guillotine choke. But how violent is that? Grabbing someone's neck and dragging it. Oh, mate. Elbows. And I never got to throw an elbow in a live fight because I never competed at the professional level. But with my frame, the way I'm built, I was really good with elbows on the pads, on the boxing, on the heavy bag, and obviously almost anybody can look good on the pads, right? I understand that. But I feel like the way my body is built, I feel throwing elbows is extremely natural for me. Maybe it's something to do with taller people. I've noticed that anyway when you see it with taller people in combat sports. When it comes to elbows and knees, they feel a lot heavier and more powerful than my punches, for example. But elbows are extremely violent, and that's prevalent in Muay Thai. Not just MMA, but MMA, you throwing elbows on the ground, smashing people's faces in with elbows. If you're doing stuff like that day in, day out, all you're doing is feeding aggression. So whilst there's an element of discipline, of course, you're getting up, training 3 times a day. I was training 3 times a day at my height when it came to MMA. I put it that way. As an amateur fighter, training, I was thinking at one point I was going to be a pro, but I was training 3 times a day. Right? It sounds ridiculous, but that's what I would do. I'd wake up, for example, a typical day for me, I would wake up, this is like heavy training, so I'd wake up, what did I do? I'd wake up, go to the gym was down the road, there's a weights gym that was linked, that was directly below my MMA gym, so I'd walk 10 minutes down the road, go hit some weights in the morning, come back, do some hill sprints, go back to mine, do a bit of yoga, stretches, chill, and then I'd wait for the afternoon session where I'd have a private boxing session with my teammate who was also a pro fighter. And I'd have an hour's boxing session where I'd do some technique, drill, and then spar. That was like 12 till 1. Right, 12 till 1, 12 till half 1. And then I would go back home, chill, relax, eat, shower, all that sort of stuff. And then I'd come back for the evening session, the main evening session at the gym. And sometimes that was 6 till 9, if I could last that long. Sometimes I'll just do the 6 till 7 or the 6 till 7 MMA class or the 7 till 9. But sometimes I would do the full 6 till 9. So 6 till 7, full MMA, where you're doing the grappling, the wrestling, cage wrestling, sparring as well. Ground control, that kind of thing. And then you have 7 till 9 jiu-jitsu. So that's either gi or there was no gi on some days. So the first hour, 7 till 8, was technique, with a bit of rolling at the end. Oh no, at that particular gym it was technique, and then 8 till 9 was just straight rolling. That's how many hours of combat? So minus the weights and the hill sprints, that was about 5 hours of combat training, hand-to-hand combat training. Is it 5 hours? Excuse me, 4 hours. So about 4 hours of combat training. And I would do that regularly, about 5 or 6 days a week. And I did that I kept that up, that kind of training, I kept that up for about 2.5 years before I toned it down. And I started training like twice a day. But even training twice a day in some sort of combat sport is still ridiculous. Now I don't train that much, I train about, well, in all honesty, this last month, 2 months, I've not trained at all in any combat sports, apart from what I've been doing on the heavy bag at the gym. Due to my current circumstances, you can feel free to check my channel out. I'm technically homeless right now, so I've not been able to get to any gym. But before that, I was training about 3 to 4 times a week, so I train about 3 to 4 times a week on average. That's still a decent amount. But getting back to the main point, and this has only continued to happen, you're seeing multiple incidents come to light of fighters getting involved in domestic violence, male fighters, some of them huge guys, heavyweights, light heavyweights, middleweights. But this has been well documented, to be fair, and to a certain extent, I think certain organisations like to brush things under the rug, sweep things under the rug. Because obviously it's not a good look, is it? It's not a good look at all. But it's to be expected. Yes, there is an element of discipline, I'll say that again, when it comes to training martial arts, especially the way that a lot of MMA fighters train and live. They live and breathe fighting. It's their life. Dustin Poirier, who's recently retired, has been training, has been competing for, I think he said 20 years? For 20 years, he's been of the mindset of how can I get better? How can I improve? How can I do this? How can I do that? Everything fighting related, fighting has been the center of his life. And the moment he retires, not the moment obviously, but when he retires, he's getting involved in certain things that he shouldn't. Obviously, this recent arrest is an example of that. But there are fighters who are active, or who were active, who have been struggling with domestic violence incidents, got themselves tied up and involved in certain things that they shouldn't have. It's not good. And again, I'll relate it to personal experience. I've seen aggression increase in my life through, and I didn't understand it, but it was linked. I would say, pretty sure it was linked to the amount of MMA training I was doing. And this is me speaking as I wasn't even a pro athlete. And I could have competed professionally, realistically, the way I was training, but I didn't. There were a lot of people who compete at the amateur scenes, to be fair, who could compete professionally. But that's not the road that a lot of coaches, rightfully so, want to take their athletes because it's not recommended, right? It doesn't matter how hard you train, you shouldn't jump straight into a pro fight, realistically, no matter how good you are. It's always good to get that experience at the amateur scenes first. But you're spending your days punching and kicking and rolling around and wrestling with other grown men who are also extremely aggressive. Some of the sparring sessions I've had, for example, I've had 3 fights. And thankfully, they all ended quickly, right? I was able to get a submission very quickly on all of my opponents. But I've had sparring sessions, this isn't to brag, but I've had sparring sessions much tougher than those fights I had, thankfully. Now, I'm not trying to say if I went on continually competing, I wouldn't have ever lost, obviously. Losses do happen. At times, I'm not the best fighter in the world or anything like that, of course not. But you're spending your days, again, punching, kicking, elbowing, kneeing, grappling, wrestling, strangling other grown men. It's going to have a certain effect on your psyche. It just is. Most grown men, most people don't know how to fight. Most people. So I have an advantage, along with any other practitioner of a lot of combat sports. We have advantages as practitioners of combat sports over most of the average people. Most people walking around on this earth. I feel confident, and I'm not trying to say we are invincible. We're not. Anything can happen in a street fight. But there's a lot more of a chance that we can come out on top if something was to go down when it comes to violence. I think there's plenty of examples on the internet of people messing with MMA fighters and it not coming out great for them at all. But to turn that around and be beating your spouse, your partner, your girlfriend, is not great. It's diabolical, really, when you think about it. A highly trained, skilled, tough, physically speaking, grown man using those skills against your partner. It's very bad. But a lot of that is fed from the art itself. It's a weird one. It's a terrible one, really. The very art that you use, that you are trained in, that you can use then to defend your wife and yourself against other people, you then use those skills. And you may not necessarily have to use those skills, you know what I'm saying, but that same aggression that comes from that training gets redirected toward the person who deserves it the least. It's very sad. And this is only going to continue to grow because MMA, especially when it comes to the UFC, it rewards violence. I mean, you have $100,000 knockout bonuses now. Right, the bonuses have doubled due to this new Paramount deal. You have the Contender Series, where Dana White actively chooses people based on how violent their performance is in the series. I remember when Brendan Loughnane is a very popular fighter here in the UK, born in Manchester. I think he is, he's born in Manchester, so came from the same city. Same as Lerone Murphy, who's an active UFC fighter today. They came from the same place, right? Brendan Loughnane was denied a UFC contract based on his performance in the Contender Series years ago. And why was that? Because he went for a takedown. He shot him for a takedown at the end of the fight. And you see on Dana White's face, he was loving it. Brendan Loughnane and the guy, his opponent, they were beating each other up. Beating the snot out of each other. Brendan Loughnane, I believe he was getting the better of the exchanges. He was getting the better of the exchanges. The other guy was tough. Taking a beating. But Brendan Loughnane, I guess thinking in sport mode, let me get this win secured. Even though he had it secured, I guess it was a tactical error on his part. Not a tactical error in any other fight, but for the Contender Series, Dana just wanted to see blood. He just wanted to see violence. And so he shot for a takedown, and you see it on Dana White's face. He's like, don't go for a takedown 10 seconds at the end of the fight, the last 10 seconds of the fight. I believe those were his words. And because of that, he denied Brendan Loughnane a UFC contract. And obviously went on to compete in PFL, became a millionaire and all that sort of stuff. So we found success anyway. But my point is, it's only going to grow. I believe this trend is only going to grow. The more that violence gets rewarded in sport, because it's a violent sport anyway, it's violent enough. It was even more violent back in the first UFC, when all sorts of things were allowed, which aren't allowed today, but the athletes weren't as good, for sure. So now the athletes are getting better, to a certain extent. There are people specifically training for MMA, specifically. So the violence is only going to increase. And as a result, I believe you will see more and more domestic violence incidents, unfortunately. And I don't know if there's a way to stop that. Because whilst I appreciate what MMA has done for me, I can also see the negative side effects, for sure. And the whole scene that surrounds the commercial side of MMA isn't great. I mean, realistically, you are competing half naked in a cage for the entertainment of a drunken audience. Every single round, a half naked woman, right, in a thong walks about holding up a card, showing you what round is. Like, it's a very sinful environment when you think about it. So, you know what I'm saying? Like, Las Vegas is the fight capital of the world, apparently. What is that called? Sin City. A place where gambling is encouraged. So, that's all I've got to say on this matter. Take care, thank you for watching.